is the captain, Luke Chambers, who may just have ended Norwich City's derby dominance. Town have scored in the 80th.
Welcome back, everyone. We've got the big one this weekend, Sunday afternoon, against Norwich, our most bitter rivals. I won't refer to them as anything nasty on here, purely for the respect line, but when paying respect to Norwich, let's just say that we haven't beaten them in 10 years. I think the last time we actually beat Norwich was in 2009. Ironically, the last game we beat Norwich 3-2 at home. I remember it quite fondly actually. Was Alan Quinn, DeSantos and Jonathan Stead wrapped up the score, I think. And yeah, that was Jimmy Jordan's last game in charge of Ipswich Town. Some could argue that that was Marcus Evans's first real stamp on the squad, was to get rid of Jimmy Jordan, and probably against most fans' wishes, even though he had a terrible away record, Jimmy Jordan had quite a good home record, and we always used to see him do well at home. But taking that all into consideration, Jim was sacked after beating Norwich 3-2 at home. You know, the most popular result you can get is to beat Norwich, and Jim done that quite well. And we had Roy Keane come in, and since then we've played Norwich 10 times, and in that period we've lost 6 of those games and only drawn 4 times. But of late we've kind of levelled out with Norwich, I would probably say. So yeah, Sunday's going to be exciting. I think both teams have started pretty poorly this season, but is that because we are poor sides? I don't think it is. We're both in transition periods. You'd argue Norwich's is a little more developed than ours, though. They've already had a season under their new manager. They don't seem to be kicking on, so you'd argue that they're kind of in a sticky situation at the moment. So I've heard the whispers that Craig Bellamy may be taking over from Daniel Farke, but who knows? Maybe his future may depend on the result this weekend against Ipswich. But I'm hopeful for the Blues this weekend, to be honest. One thing you could say about Norwich fans this season, they've been so quiet. You don't hear anything really from them with regards to banter anymore. If anything, you'd probably say it's a hint of jealousy. They scraped a 1-1 draw against us at their place towards the end of last season. Obviously we were in absolute doldrums with McCarthy at the time, and we can all refer back to that celebration that McCarthy made towards the fans. That shows what kind of situation we were in at the time. We completely got rid of that now. We've got a manager who appreciates the fans, and a club that's tried to reconnect with the fans after probably 3 years apart from each other, I would suggest. That communication barrier between the fans and the club has been broken down by McCarthy, because the manager is the face of the club. So at the end of the day, we have got the right man going forward, in my opinion. We do have to give him time. But Norwich fans, I don't think they feel the same way about their manager as we do about ours. I mean, when he came in, you could suggest that he was a complete randomer. Not many have heard of him before, but he's come in. They finished below us last season, and that's understandable. You can't really knock them down for that. You know, they had a rebuilding season, but I mean, they brought in players like, I have heard, you know, things like, oh, we brought in players from, you know, who played in German Cup finals, who played in the Champions League final. You're talking about Borussia Dortmund youngsters here that have hardly featured at all. All they have is a few 5-minute appearances under their belt, and you may count as experience, but if you look at the vast difference between the kind of player that we're going for and what Norwich are going for at the moment. Norwich are going for expensive European players from top clubs, and we're going for hard working 25 and under individuals who've made over 100 appearances, who've actually provided something in their gameplay. Let's talk about history, because I know that's always a sticky subject when Norwich fans, they love to banter, but they don't really have a history, do they? Regardless of playing Bayern Munich in the Europa Cup or winning the Milk Cup on the one or numerous occasions they have done. To be honest, Norwich don't really feature in my football spectrum, but how can you compare Norwich's record in any competition against winning the FA Cup, the First Division and the UEFA Cup? There's just no comparison there at all. No history at all. And then what you could argue is that Norwich are arguably a bigger side at the moment because of their recent times in the Premier League, and you can't sit there as a Town fan, you can't sit there and deny that. But at the end of the day, the record still shows that we're 43 wins over 41 at the moment. I think it's been like 26 draws or something like that. So we've still got a 2-game advantage over Norwich. So I don't think at this point in time we could to say the record's at threat. But this season we really ought to start getting back on our feet. Although I'd admit that's going to take time. I don't expect us to run out winners against Norwich at all this weekend. I don't expect us to outplay them in any sense, but it's early doors for our squad. Expectation levels are low, I think, but going into the game this weekend, you'd have to look at Norwich's squad and say, yeah, they would have the upper hand, and they usually would have the upper hand. It's purely based on their position, the money they've had to spend, the resources. I mean, their academy's doing well recently, but so is ours. But if you look at the different types of managers we have, they've gone for the young German, and we've gone for the young Englishman. So you could argue that Norwich's side is going to be built, like a majority of their side is going to be built on young European players, whereas ours is going to be built on young homegrown individuals. So it'll be interesting to see the different styles of football, but at the end of the day, I think we're all going for the same thing. We're going for attractive football, and I think that's what both sides have wanted over the last few years. So what you can't deny is that on Sunday there's going to be a clash of two completely different sides with two completely different ethoses, and it's going to be exciting to say the least. We're still waiting for our first win. How good would it be if we could make our first win against Norwich, not only for a decade now, but for the first one under Paul Hurst? I mean, that would be amazing. It would lift everyone, it would lift all the fans, lift the club. It would attract more fans back down to Portman Road. And let's not forget, we're still unbeaten at Portman Road this season, so it's not an easy place for someone to come and get a result, especially Norwich. And you'd consider playing against Norwich as a one-off game every time we do play it. So league positions aside, it doesn't matter who you are, the result can always swing your way. And as fans, we do have a position to support the club, and especially through these times, we need to get behind the boys on Sunday completely. I have seen that we sold nearly 25,000 tickets for Saturday. Norwich would laugh at that, but our tickets aren't as cheap as theirs. We don't hand them out for free, and it's been hard for Ipswich fans to connect with the football that we've been going through for the last 5 years. I'd probably say it's negative football, but yeah, Sunday will be hopefully a different class. So just a few updates really with regards to the squad. I've not really. I keep hearing that we're going after 3 loan signings, but I've not really heard any connections apart from Curtis Tilt. But if the Donatian situation doesn't sort itself out, then we'll only be able to sign 2. So you'd probably say Tilt and a winger. don't think. I think many would argue that the priority would be a striker, but I'm not really sure that we would go after a striker at this point. If we got 3 targets lined up, then that's fine, but I haven't really heard anything about it, to be honest. But Tristan Nydens reportedly joining St Johnstone on loan, so that's probably going to sort itself out today. Other than that, Emir Hughes scored a late equaliser the other day against Crewe under 23s. Obviously quite similar side to the one that beat Hull City under 23s 8-1 the other week, but looks like we struggled to get a result at Crewe. But it's good to see Emir coming back. He looked quite sharp against Hull, and obviously he scored the late equaliser yesterday afternoon, I think it was. And I'm excited to have him back, to be honest, because when he does play, he's quite magical in the midfield. I always remember the Ipswich Newcastle game at Portman Road, and how brilliant the link-up play was between Emmanuel Hughes and Grant Warden on that day. And definitely their chemistry on that day won us the game, and Hughes scored the final goal in that game, and I just remember that quite well. And he excites me as a midfielder. He always plays on the ground, he's always playing the forward pass, so to get him back would always be a benefit for our squad. But yeah, not being linked to any players that we could bring in at the moment. It could be behind closed doors. Well, you'd obviously say it's behind closed doors, but we would probably know by now who we're being linked with. So realistically, for me, I did do a poll on Twitter for this, but it does look like there's probably going to be 2 players coming before Friday. 3 will probably be pushing it. So whether or not those players go straight into the squad is another thing. Are they support for the current starting 11? I don't know. That's to be probably talked about in the future. But yeah, really looking forward to the game this weekend. You've got my tickets, so there'll be another match day vlog, and hopefully another 3 points. Thanks for taking time to watch this video. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram, use the details on the screen. And please don't forget to subscribe to any video content by going back onto my homepage and clicking subscribe. Many more videos to come. Come on, you Blues!